Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX. And I'm extremely excited today because I'm joined by a legal juggernaut, an intellectual giant in the legal field in South Africa, Advocate Muzi Sikhakhane SC, I might add. Advocate, thank you so much for joining us on SMWX.
Thank you, Caesar. It's good to be here. It's a very nice setup. Really good.
We're so glad to have you. And
Yeah.
I wanted to jump straight into something that I think confronts legal professionals, especially advocates in this country. It's a naive view. It's a view that you like the people you represent and you're somehow trying to forward some agenda or other by representing them as opposed to doing your job.
Yeah, it's a misconception by people, a lot of people, until they need an advocate.
Right.
You know, I always think it's like watching a surgeon, a brain surgeon, and you ask him if he likes the patient that is performing
what
that
party
surgery.
do you like?
Absolutely. And people don't believe that. Just like that surgeon, if you asked him that question, he would tell you it doesn't matter. You know, so in a way, I think people think we represent people because we believe in their cause. When actually, no, we represent them because there is a legal issue they want to raise. And we trained to try and not judge them. But we forget this. All of us forget it. I too forget that when somebody else is representing someone, because sometimes they can be so good. What they're saying is in conflict with what I believe as a human being, not as a lawyer.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've experienced this just personally as well as the son of an advocate.
Yeah.
Every time, my father represents someone else, I must now explain why he's doing his job, and I don't think people realize the way this kind of even affects families and people connected to advocates, and it's quite a delicate balance that you have to strike personally.
Every job has its moral dilemmas, but I think as a lawyer you have many, because you represent people and people don't know why you must represent people they dislike. And of course, when they knock on your door, they will be quite shocked if you ask them what party they vote for.
Absolutely.
Before you agree. So I think it's human nature, Caesar, in a way, in that we think justice is the preserve of people we like. And in political environments, it gets worse. I mean, if you ask people who march when there's a case, and whether they would march if somebody else they dislike faced an injustice, you'll be surprised. Or that people who go to match courts and high court to say so and so must not be given bail. Ask them if their son was charged that day, they would be the first to call an advocate. So it's the nature of human beings and our notion of justice. But it's basically the nature of bias.
Yeah.
In human beings. We see this in politics, we see this in social discourse, we see it in economics. That all of these things are not valueless. So even our choice of who we like and our standards change. And I don't think there's ever been a time like that in South Africa like now, where people hold different standards for the same thing, depending on who's in trouble or who they like.
So I wanted to ask you, having recently represented President Zuma, you've also represented Julius Malema, by the way, as well. But what was that like for you personally? Because, former President Zuma is a very polarizing figure. He solicits very strong reactions either way. And I wonder what that was like just personally and psychologically for you as you pursued your professional duties. Did people come at you and say, why are you doing this? Did others say, we love you for doing it?
Yeah.
What was it like?
All of the cases I've done, Caesar, have been like this. I'm sure President Zuma disliked me a lot when I represented Julius. I'm sure many people disliked me a lot when I represented Tokyo and different people. So it comes with the job. But
sure,
it's difficult because even your colleagues you expect know this tend to have a negative attitude towards you. So to answer your question directly, it's a hard thing, but it comes with the territory. I've lost friends for representing different people. When I represented Julius, I lost a lot of comrades and friends I used to know, and people I used to have coffee with who I think were Zuma supporters then couldn't look at me in the eye. When I represent Zuma as I do now,
Sure.
People who I used to have coffee with in Rosebank no longer want to have coffee with me. They walk past because they think I represent what they think he represents. When actually, no, I represent what a client believes is a legal issue that he is concerned with. Sure. And that's all, you know. And if you ask me whether I've liked all people I've represented, I would tell you it's irrelevant.
That's a good way of saying no.
It's real. Well, yeah, because actually, I think we don't like most of our clients. But anyway, just one example I can give you about what we go through as lawyers is the fact that I don't think you are worth the title advocate if you can't deal with difficult cases. It's like a doctor who says, I only deal with people who have headaches. I don't deal with people who are too sick. As an advocate, I think the test is to deal with those cases that don't just challenge you because they are difficult legally, but they challenge you because they test whether you are a just human being. You can represent people you dislike and people you like because they all need justice. It's not the preserve of people I like. That's the attitude. But hard, yes it is, because I don't know how many people I've lost for representing Zuma. I think lots of friends and comrades I used to know no longer talk to me. But it comes with the job, it will pass. And next time I'll be representing Cyril Ramaphosa when they depose him, if they will. And I will represent him, you know, or anybody. You know, that's my attitude towards law and justice.
And it seems as though you've thought quite deeply about this question of justice as it relates to South Africa. I'm a bit concerned, and just to share some of my feelings, that where we're going right now as a country is we're in this euphoric moment. And we all like the leader, or at least that's what the media tells us. And so if there are infringements on the law, or if there are unlawful behaviors that may or may not have occurred, we're prepared to turn a blind eye because we tend to like the person who's in charge, or we like the regime that's in charge. My worry is that that might actually undermine the rule of law. And I don't know how you feel about where we are in terms of the rule of law in South Africa, because there's a sense that, no, rule of law is back. Everything is fine. I don't know if we just like what's happening now, or whether rule of law really is being reinforced in this period of euphoria.
Let me tell you, the difficulty with the public discourse is that it's run by lawyers, judges, and journalists. And those three types of people, in my view, me included, have a very little capacity for self-reflection. All of those people, journalists, judges, lawyers, and politicians, they have a very, very low capacity for self-reflection. And that is why all different narratives you see in society about the rule of law and justice depend entirely on what psychologists call confirmation bias. People are looking for things that are consistent with their wishes, and that's their notion of justice. And that's why I said in court the other day, you know, a blind man can bump his forehead on that door and a pole there and there. But people who are blinded by bias are worse. They take others to the gas chambers. They don't care what happens to them. And that is why one of my regrets about South Africa is the fact that extension of political thought, that political bias, has extended to law, to the judiciary, and everywhere else. And it undermines justice and the very things that people say they are fighting for. And so, in a way, I watch a lot of analysts, legal and political analysts. I'm telling you, Sizwe, I listen to them and I'm in despair, because all they're doing is parroting their wishes rather than pulling out what exactly is at play in society, in the political discourse.
To change tack somewhat, you've also been a strong advocate for racial equality, racial justice within the legal profession, and most recently through the Pan-African Bar Association, you've been involved in trying to structurally reform the practice of advocacy.
Yeah.
Take us through why you thought it wasn't just time to reform the current structures, but why an entirely new bar association was necessary for the profession.
I regard myself as a person who's obsessed with equality since I was young. And I also hold very radical views about how society should create socio-economic justice, right? Mm. And I worry about South Africa, the nature of South Africa's political transition, because I think asking black people to bend over backwards became an ideology, almost permanent, a permanent ideology. And so I believe that you can transform certain things, and it's true that we do so. But I also think, people who've been oppressed need to create things that are theirs, whose values are freedom, equality, and justice. And to keep tinkering with structures as we've been doing for 25 years works in some contexts, but doesn't in others. And because there are contexts where a structure that was created for colonial purposes, you just can't change it. You also can't change it if it was created for patriarchal purposes. Sure. So in a way, apartheid and colonialism have taught us to hate it, but also to seek its validation in a way that we're scared to stand on our own. So the Pan-African Bar Association for me was long time coming in the legal profession, that black people needed to create something in order to demonstrate that they are proud of who they are and they have confidence in what they can do. They don't need to be accommodated. I believe that you must, at some point, not just tinker with structures that are not yours or demand recognition, but you must demonstrate that the values that you preach can be lived. And you do that by creating a structure in which you live the values you've been preaching about. And PABASA for me is that, and it's been done. A number of people, we're not the first one to do something, but maybe we're the first ones to take this brave step, which of course, as you know, it turns you against your own. White structures, when you face them, when you confront them, they send your own to fight you. And so it requires leadership to be able to know that I'm creating something, we are creating something that challenges an entrenched system. So in a way, that's what PABASA is for us. I think we will see the value of this institution 50 years from now. Just like the Bar Association in South Africa, the GCB, formed in 1904, is entrenched. And we need to create things of our own, things that we trust, things that are radical, things that should change South Africa for the better.
And you mentioned the way in which black South Africans have been in some ways forced to accept an ideology of forgiveness without the requisite justice going side by side with that. And it feels like over the last few years in our country, particularly the last 5 years, there's been an increasing doubt over the ability of the constitutional framework to bring about the kind of equality and justice that is crucial for the future of our country, particularly as it relates to race and gender. Yeah. And of course, the Section 25 process currently has been at the forefront of that debate about whether the Constitution is capable of creating this equality in our society. What are your views as a legal practitioner, someone who knows the Constitution intimately, about whether the dispensation has the wherewithal to take us from where we are to where we need to be?
No, I think our document, the Constitution is an important document, but it's a living document. And a Constitution can do two things. It can change, transform a country for good, right? And then set it on a path for freedom. But it can hamper freedom too. And I think South Africans, are a little naive about the purpose of their constitution. I think it has a lot of civil liberties that we want. But in all post-colonial states, you will see that constitutions are created, yes, to give the, let's call it some of the freedoms that we need, but sometimes colonizers entrench in that constitution comfort for themselves. They guarantee comfort for themselves. I'm not one of those that believe that you can't change a constitution in order to give it life, to give it more freedom, to make sure that it does what the struggle was about. I think we forget that the struggle was not about appeasing those who colonized us. And I think our leaders who did great things for us also taught us wrong things. That you can only change, you can only lead by appeasing your former colonizers. I believe that actually true freedom will come when our leaders are brave enough to tell white South Africans sometimes what they don't want to hear and say, we will take you along with us into this pain that you caused. We don't want to cause the same pain to you, but we want you to acknowledge that you caused pain. And I think our leaders are too scared to do those things, and in a way, and I think Section 25 for me is inadequate to deal with precisely what happened to those who were colonized.
I'm glad you touched on 25 itself, because I've read the section so many times, and my problem with it is that it seems to speak with two mouths.
Yeah.
It's not that it definitely permits expropriation without compensation. Sometimes I read one section, I think, oh, okay, case closed. And then I read the next section and I think, what's going on here? And for me, that's the real problem. It's not that the Constitution says this or it says that. It's that it's actually very difficult to determine what it says. And it feels like the clarity in Section 25 could be enhanced.
This is where you've hit the nail right on the head. The dishonesty by people, legal practitioners, some of them very progressive, who tell you, no, we can work around this Section 25. The dishonesty. You ask them one question. If you truly committed to giving the land to its rightful owners, and you have two choices, one is to go to courts and interpret what already exists, why are you so opposed to something that is clearer, which is an amendment? You don't have to go to court.
Sure.
So the dishonesty of people who tell you that they want to work around what exists, they are not telling you exactly what it is they believe. It's people who don't believe we should do anything. Because they wouldn't be opposed to clarity. Why do they choose something that needs us to go and seek an adjudicator? So it's people who are pretending they are radical, when actually they have bought into the system of white appeasement, of thinking that the country will fall apart if you don't nurse those who hold economic power. And I think for as long as we do that, we're lacking leadership. I think South Africans, black and white, require brave leaders. And white South Africans require leaders who will tell them their sins. And not say we will condemn you for their sins, but we want you to walk with us to change what you did. But I think our leaders, and many, many people, I think are scared of telling those truths. And I don't think you can lead and you can ever have freedom, true freedom, if you are not courageous and you're not honest. And I think that's what we're lacking in the discourse at the moment.
Well, in terms of courage and honesty, you were involved in a report that...
I knew that was coming. It's all right.
It's funny because you haven't spoken about, I don't know if people are scared to ask you, but the Sikhakhane Report, which was about SARS, it was about the intelligence gathering in SARS, among other things, and whether that was appropriate within the legal framework. And that report has become an absolute political hot potato. The report is there and people can read the report and what it says, but what I'm interested in is what's it like to author a report like that and then see it be this huge politically charged point of of concern, and how the media in various ways has interpreted it completely differently at different points in our history.
Yeah. And look, let me not go to the details,
Sure.
but since now that I'm here, I think one of the difficult things about reports like that is that when you write them or when you do the work, you're not aware of the political fallouts that will follow. It's something I've said to Judge Nugent when I wrote him a letter, is that, you just never know these things. I believe that you must do what you are called upon to do honestly. I live with the pain that people, and journalists in particular, say whatever they say. I understand they've bought into certain narratives and counter narratives in society. But I live better knowing that if someone read what I wrote, they would know that not once do I condemn any human being there or any individual, because at the time you're trying to assist an organization fix what you thought needed fixing. Sure. Investigating is like walking, it's like someone asking you to walk in this park and tell them what you see. So you're not writing a judgment, you're not judging people. But of course what happens is that those things take a life of their own. Absolutely. And you're not in control of these narratives. It hurts you, but sometimes I understand. I've been in this struggle since I was a teenager. And I do understand what happens is that when people, everyone, if you ask anyone about my report, they only remember one line. It's more than 100 pages. They remember me saying that something is unlawful. I've never talked about what else I say, what other suggestions I make. I'll tell you why. It's because one of the saddest things in South Africa at the moment is that our political analysts and our journalists have not stood just back to look at their role in society. I believe that journalists must never look up to anybody, not me, because we will disappoint them. And I think what has happened in society about that report and many other things is that we try and see things through our own lenses of our choices, of our biases, and what we would like to see. And I think we give ourselves very little time to just reflect on ourselves. The other thing I think about the report like that and others, I do lament the judiciary. I know no one wants to talk about the judiciary. I do lament the fact that I think it's important. Since very few people should be judges in society. Very, very few. Fewer than we have. Because being a judge is 50% about knowing the law, which all of you can learn.
Sure.
50% is about being a good, just human being who can do a self-introspection. And I think when you lack the other 50, which is the most important, being a good and just person, you become an extension of political narratives without being conscious of it.
Well, I must say I was rather surprised to see certain people involved in one aspect of the report recanting. How do you sit back and just allow things to play out? Because I think that's like the opposite of what a politician does. A politician wants to get in and at every point of the narrative control it and make sure that it's... Whereas a legal practitioner like yourself, even a judge, often has to stand back for years and then is vindicated, a decade later.
Sizwe, the people who call you and call editors at 702 or ENCA or SABC, if our journalists could know that people who have nothing to hide don't do spin. The ones who call you, the one whose spokespersons tell you what to write, who are telling you, I could keep quiet for 10 years to come about this, because not that I was perfect, no, because I did nothing wrong. I sleep well at night. I have nothing that I think, wow, will come out, let me manage the media. No, I don't have to manage the media. The people who manage the media through their spokespersons, who create narratives, they have journalists writing about their narratives and only about their narratives. If we were smart enough in society, we would know that it's people who do that have something to hide. And our jobs as lawyers, but particularly for journalists and analysts, is to look for what you are not being told. is to look for what is behind the brown envelope you were given in Rosebank. Why were you called to a coffee shop in Rosebank to get an explanation about something that is obvious? The reason is that all of those people who sit with you in Rosebank and Hyde Park and Melrose Arc to tell you about things that are obvious, it's because they are taking you a certain path. People who know the truth don't care. It comes out, can take 5 years. And that's my attitude, is that if I've not done anything wrong, that I cannot, well, as a Christian and an activist, that I can't justify, well, I would worry. I don't worry because I haven't done anything wrong. And I think all of those who've been managing our journalists, in my view, can only be those who have something they're trying to shepherd them against.
Well, Advocate Sikhakhane, it's been a tremendous honor, and I hope I can take you to coffee one day with no brown envelope.
Thank you.
SMWX. No young people are around the decision-making table. Let some new voices come to the fore. Follow us on WhatsApp. Catch us live Tuesdays and Thursdays. Out with the old, in with the new. SMWX.